Are you ready for 2015's most hilarious horror film? Then get ready for A Date with Ghosts. Let me repeat that title for you. A Date with Ghosts. It doesn't really make sense, does it? And this movie doesn't really make sense, let me tell you. So what's the plot here about with A Date with Ghosts? So it mainly focuses on a young couple, and for some convoluted reason they basically are in the middle of nowhere and decide to kind of investigate this kind of old abbey, except it's not an old abbey. It looks like it's very well kept up and in good condition, but whatever. And here they discover there's actually some kind of supernatural presence here, and ghosts are wandering the abbey itself. They actually find some other humans, sort of survivors, I guess you'd say, people sort of kept prisoner. And basically this ground is haunted by a variety of spirits, mainly these kind of wandering monks in kind of robes and stuff. And essentially it's from that point on it's really kind of a survival tale. These kind of people seem to sort of branch off and go in different directions for no apparent reason other than to kind of stretch out those very sort of meagre 70-minute running time. And that's pretty much the movie. Now, I will say this, and I repeat, this film is an extremely low budget film, and I'm talking probably a few £1,000s, if that. So, you know, you can't expect anything too grandiose with this kind of extremely low budget, but it kind of the low budget is all throughout the movie. Especially, let's look at it on a technical level first of all. So the technical side of it, the equipment they're using is very kind of low rent to actually make the film. So the sound editing, first of all, is terrible. When you go from shot to shot, you'll kind of notice different kind of sound and the ambient noise, for example. The camera that you're using seems to be not of a particularly good quality. The way the camera is handled as well is sometimes out of focus. You know, it's between sort of, as it moves around, it looks a lot like kind of shaky cam, but not meant to be, things like that. So on a technical side of it, the equipment looks relatively kind of quite poor, quite cheap, and it translates on screen for that. But everything about this movie is just very, very kind of low budget, quickly kind of put together. The story doesn't really make sense. There's tons of things I could really go on about here. One of the main thing that frustrated me is that these people seem to kind of wander off in their own different directions for no apparent reason, and just so they can kind of split up from the group and have, you know, more dramatic tension. They just seem to go in different directions time and time again for no other reason other than so they can be kind of alone. It's just stupid. There's no reason for it. And there's a few other things as well. For example, like in one scene, one of the girls kind of vanquishes a spirit with using a kind of a crucifix, but these spirits are in a church filled with crosses and stuff. So why is that working there? It's stupid, absolutely stupid. So going back to the kind of the budget of this thing, obviously the acting here is relatively amateur. I mean, obviously these people are, you know, amateur actors, I would imagine, and I should expect the acting does kind of reflect that. The opening sort of scene has a kind of weird sort of piano soundtrack that kind of doesn't fit, and you can kind of tell straight away that this film is going to be kind of very, very kind of low rent just from that opening scene. The other weird thing about this film is, and it almost seems like nearly half the film is establishing shots. This film has got so many establishing shots in it, it becomes like, what the hell am I watching? Am I watching some kind of advert for a church or Spooky Woods? I mean, the guy who is the director here is obviously so sort of obsessive trying to set up mood and stuff. He spends far too much time just focusing on the actual graveyard or the woods or kind of parts of the abbey and stuff like that. And then you're thinking, okay, maybe a couple of shots, but it keeps going and going and going, and it happens so much throughout the movie. Now, in regards to the actual kind of the ghostly effects themselves, there is a fair amount. The ghosts do appear quite a lot throughout the movie, but they're all kind of done on kind of video effects. Now, I will say this, there is one or two fairly decent shots, and I'm talking literally just shots, where they kind of do look quite menacing, and the actual, if you were to take a still frame, yeah, there's a couple of shots here that do look quite good and do look sort of, you know, quite spooky, but unfortunately it's not even CGI, it's kind of video effects, like the disappearing ghosts and things like that are kind of just visual effects that are done on a video camera, things like that. So it looks really, really cheap, unfortunately. Now, like I said, I reviewed some bad films. This film is obviously an extremely low budget, but I was so intrigued by what I was watching, I couldn't help but kind of just be interested in what I was watching. And that's one of the weird things. I mean, I've reviewed some bad films. I reviewed a movie called The Hospital, which was the lowest rated film I've ever watched, and that was bad because it was so needlessly offensive and just poorly made. This one is poorly made, but nevertheless, I found it intriguing to watch because it obviously is such a kind of amateur effort. Don't take notice of the cover, please, because that is completely irrelevant to the film. Again, the title doesn't really make a lot of sense. It's such a kind of oddity, this film. If you're a fan of these kind of so bad movies, I mean, it isn't good by any stretch of the imagination, but it's certainly intriguing to watch, to sort of see this kind of effort. I mean, it looks like a load of friends have got together for a weekend and decided to make a film using one of their kind of phones or camcorders. Kind of rushed out a kind of script, not really thought through some of the plots and things like that. Got some of their mates as actors and just kind of like bunged a few sort of royalty-free bit of music over the top of it as well. It really does look like that. So despite the fact that obviously that this is probably someone's passion project, and I'm sorry to poo-poo your dreams somewhat, but as a viewing experience, other than just kind of a curiosity, it's not really worth your time, unfortunately. So I'm going to give this movie a 3 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I will look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.